We set out at the beginning of this project with a fairly clear-cut idea. We wanted to explore an organization on Toronto Island that we had heard of called Artscape. All we knew is that this is an organization that rents out studio space to artists and maybe offered some workshops now and then. We knew we were looking for some kind of art community on the island, but what we found was something much more complex than that. This is a vibrant place with a mysterious history. Who are these people? What are their stories? And how did they create their own little world? Our first day on the island, we went to scope out Artscape and see what they were all about. The building is on a piece of land called Gibraltar Point. To the untrained eye, it's not much to look at. It wasn't what we were expecting, to say the least. This wasn't the kind of contemporary space you'd often associate with the Toronto art scene. As it turns out, this building has been around for centuries and used to be a school of natural sciences. The fact that it's still standing today is owed to the efforts of the residents of the island.
I was actually one of the first people to suggest the idea as they built the new school. And the reason they had to build the new school because there was the old school, which is Artscape, was getting moldy walls and it wasn't good for the kids. So it came up that the Board of Education, really, this building is over 100 years old. We need a new school. So that was built, and as it was being finished, part of the deal apparently was to smash the old school.
And there's I don't know if you're familiar with the guy Lao Tzu, a Eastern philosopher. He has a wonderful phrase. It's effectively, what you see depends on where you stand when you look. And as far as we were concerned, when we were looking, we saw nothing but fantastic. And so we went about building a case to save the building, and we put together a document to deal with the bureaucracy. But thanks to Lita and some of the friends, they were the driving force. The rest of us were obedient implementers.
We live in this world where everything is thrown away. It got to be a passion for me. And then once I get that, as I said, I had no shame. I got it in my teeth that it had to be saved because I could see the great value. And then we artists had all these brilliant ideas.
They had a vision, but now they had to make it a reality.
First of all, we had to convince the city that it was a good idea because in order to get a brand new school, because that school was falling down, was in dreadful condition really. In order to get a new school, the politicians said yes, we will give you money, but you must tear down the old building. And then that was to be taken over by the parks to become an environmentally sensitive area. I think almost for a year and a half, for probably 6 months of the year and a half, I worked in this committee. I phoned the head of parks every day. First thing I did, I walked into work and I made a phone call. Mr. McIntyre, do you have anything else you'd like us to do? So the bar kept getting raised, of course, because now we're taking over a building and the liability, all the thought of it. So the idea was to prove to them that the building was viable, that it could be saved. And so
they're political masters as well.
Yeah. So first of all, we convinced, as Jim says, we convinced the political masters that 2 light bulbs can go on in the same room at the same time. This is what they did. They crawled over every square inch on top and underneath everywhere and created this so that when we went to council, they could see there were reports that indicated that the building was viable. I got to know Mr. McIntyre, the Parks Department, and we convinced Mr. McIntyre, who was a very aggressive political man, really, quite a politician, administrator, that this was a little jewel. And the park itself is a jewel in his crown, because he was the head of Toronto Parks, so he had all these parks, but this is a special place.
Today, the operations of Artscape on the island are overseen by Lisa Cristinzo. In her 8 years working here, she's witnessed the development of the residents' vision for the school.
The infrastructure was already there for an artist residency. They had the bedrooms where the teachers and the cook staff used to stay in, these big dormitories that were perfect for studios. The island community, so LIDA being one of the leaders in this process of introducing artscape to the island, went to Tim Jones, and Tim Jones saw this place and agreed it would be a great artist residency.
You know, you've got this funky wooden school, old wooden schoolhouse. You've got lots of great facilities. You've got a communal kitchen. It's really great for writers because it's relatively quiet. I mean, it's about as quiet as you get in Toronto. It's great for, you know, any other kinds of creativity.
People come from all over the world to stay at Gibraltar Point. Alistair Dixon came from the UK after falling in love with the atmosphere while visiting a friend who lived on the island. He's rented studio space from Artscape since 1999.
People are brought together in a space like this, so it fosters that kind of communication between artists. So they've created the space, and in the space things, good things, we hope, happen.
While we were at Artscape, we met Brett Nelson, a musician from Manitoba who's in the residency program, planning to stay for 8 weeks.
I was recently looking to move away from Winnipeg, where I've been living for about the last 5 years, and wasn't really sure where I was going. Sort of always liked Toronto, and also always sort of feared large cities. So this seemed like kind of a great balance of lots of time to write and be away from things, but also be in the absolute middle of things.
The housing situation on the island is a political minefield. For people like Brett and anybody else looking to live here, Gibraltar Point is one of few options. There's currently a list of 500 people waiting for homes, but in 20 years, only 47 properties have become available.
It's really difficult to get a place on the island. It's just unfortunate, but it's a limited space, and the population is getting older all the time, you know. So at some point in the next 20 years or so, I think there's, you know, more houses. People will be dying off, and more houses will become available. But it's always going to be a limited. There's always going to be a limited amount of space.
When a house becomes available through death or divorce, it goes on a list, and then the list is presented to these people that are waiting, and they have a choice to say yes or no, and it goes down the list until there's a yes. So we thought the turnover would be faster, but once you're here, people don't, well, they do divorce, I guess, but they don't leave. So there's fewer houses available. We live in a trust situation, and it isn't up to us. It's up to the combination of the Ontario government, who allowed us to stay when they tried to drive us off, but we fought it for years and we won. So it's a combination of we're leasing the land that the house sits on, even though we own our own houses. So if we want to build a new place, and we do, because we need you guys here, they are putting a stop to it. Because politically, they are different than us. We are politically left-wing. Often the government that makes these decisions, they don't like left-wing people. Harper is a good example. Thank God he's gone.
Now there's a new system in place for buying and selling these houses, which is still pretty fantastic. You know, it's not the open market. There's replacement value for the houses. So these houses are still, by Toronto standards, relatively cheap. But whether, you know, emerging artists, you know, can move in here and, you know, buy a place, well, you just can't, because there's 500 people waiting on the list anyways. So if you would put your name on the list now, maybe in 20 or 30 years, there'll be a house available.
From end to end, there were homes. If you read the history of the island, the end to end, there were homes. And they gradually eliminated it. until they got there to the Shaw House, and that was the last house burnt down, and the people stood. So that was the 21 years.
They came and basically burned buildings, you know,
Demolished them.
demolished buildings so that they could, you know, begin to prepare it for parkland. Ambulances and all of those kind of vehicles were coming across the island to come and evict us. And the community, a lot of us gathered at the bridge, and that was really, the bridge is a very significant item in our community because that's where we had the last front. And I remember being at the front holding the banner. And you start crying, right? Because you don't know, in different places they shoot people for this. You know, is that going to happen? Are we that far on the edge of things where all these heavy pieces of machinery are coming in to tell us that we can't do that?
To survive as artists, we've had to be jack of all trades. We've had to be prepared to do whatever is necessary to keep our heads above water. And so as the granting situations become more and more difficult, we've had to learn to, you know, edit photographs, edit videos, shoot videos, you know, collect all this information, stay on top of the politics, you know, stay enthusiastic, encourage people to participate with us, especially the little kids, because you want the children to understand the power of participating.
The fight strengthened me to be able to learn to stand up in council, to stand up to authority and say, this is wrong. And I will learn how to fight you. I will learn how to, and I will also learn how to get along. I will learn consensus.
The community here has fought hard to keep this building as a part of their world, but the future is uncertain.
The lease is coming up, so you know, we're hoping to renew the lease. And I would say that the vision for this place, like I said, we haven't had a whole bunch of funding here, but it's sort of this natural reno or slow reno that's happened to this space over the years, just because there's been so many people that care. I would say that we're getting to the point where it is a functional operation and it will continue beyond the lease, right?
At the moment, I'm shielding or trying to hold parts of my anxiety and anger with Artscape, because in the 15 years we have had that building, they have spent $75 million on 4 other buildings. And I think you've been in the building. I don't want the building changed. I want the building functional.
I don't know how much more they can do on the island with this. I hope that they at some point will, and I think this might be in their long-term plans, is to put a bit more money into this, because I think they realize how special this place is.
The residents of the island have had to fight for their community more than most, but for them, it's been a labor of love.
As you know, the 7-minute ferry ride, you can be all wound up like a spring, and you get on the boat, and between the wind and the waves, and you're looking at the sky, and a few gulls go by, it can be quite a different experience once you arrive at whichever of the ferry docks, even Ward's, Center, or Hanlon.
When I first met the island, physically got off the boat, and I went, oh my God, this is so familiar. The same trees, the same bugs. And I got also, that felt so good. And then I'm there for an artistic reason. And I went, so what's not to like here? It's perfect.
Personally, I think that what we have out here is ideal. I think what we have here is what everyone should have. Everyone should know their neighbors. Everyone should have safe streets. Everyone should have a clean environment filled with trees, and have access to parks and a beach and skating and all this kind of stuff. And it should be free, you know, and everyone should be safe, and you know. And so I really think that this is absolutely the most ideal community, and we fought for it. We created it.
I can't imagine a place like this would just dissolve. Like, I think people will always be interested in it.
I realize every day how lucky I am to live here.
You could set this house to flame tonight and I'd just sleep sound. I heard you'd been turning tricks beneath the neon high moon, where a piano wrestled with the alphabet and the hollow has been hadn't happened yet. Could you turn from him and look at what you found? Burn each idle souvenir and let the memories float up, and twist with the smoke into the trees, into the mist of a crescent moon, and follow visions through knotted rivers where the static solar stone persuades your fear to undermine.